I just lost my website files. I'm transferring to a new host and bungled the migration, but easy enough to rebuild it from scratch because it was always a simple site, broadfork.com. And I had on the old one a post that I titled Proxy Perpetrators. And I was watching CBS Sunday Morning this morning. It's, what is it, September the 27th, 28th, somewhere in there. And Ted Koppel was interviewing David Kaczynski, Ted Kaczynski's brother, Ted Kaczynski being the Unabomber. And he also, Gary Wright, one of Ted's victims, was in the interview, part of the interview. So Ted killed 3 people and wounded, I forget how many, more than a dozen. Of course, traumatized their friends and family, even who were not affected physically by his bombs. But, or however, Ted didn't know these people. I should say they did not know Ted. Just the same as Ted did not know the people who victimized him, his perpetrators. So anger is determined. I say determined, referencing the title of the book by neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky. And yeah, anger is determined. It's not predetermined, you know. It's determined by events. And partly, of course, also by the recovery from those events. I mean, Ted was strapped to a crucifixion board when he was a newborn. And this is where I make the comparison to Jesus. In my short book, which is almost just list processing, I should number the sentences. It's entitled Jesus and the Unabomber. So, sorry, I'm driven to distraction this morning by trying to keep a few plates spinning. So Ted did not know these people that strapped him to the crucifixion board and crucified him in his very first part of his life, newborn. Now, when you talk about recovery from trauma or recovery from circumcision, that most men seem to think they accomplished that recovery. They didn't. By degree, you know, nobody recovers from it all the way. But anyway, Ted was then 6 to 9 months old. I've heard both dates. I usually hear 9 months old when he got a hive. And I believe the hives were already a manifestation of the first trauma from the circumcision. And so his mother took him to the hospital, and he was traumatized again, mostly by being put in isolation, taken away from his parents. And his protectors, which, I mean, a lot of good happens in hospitals, but goddamn, that's rough stuff. So then, if you look at the CDC's ACEs report, Adverse Childhood Experiences, you see, you get set up for this thing where there's so much trauma and confusion that you end up bumbling along and encountering more of the same as you go. And so when Ted was 16, of course, he was compensating best he could. It was about becoming good in academics, not just mathematics, by the way, but in which he got a PhD. But and then he encounters another psychopath at Harvard in the form of Dr. Murray, who runs, when Ted was only 16 years of age, by the way, still only 16. And he spent 2 or 3 years getting, just the most horrible abuse from this man's graduate students, running a wicked, something that would make Dr. Mengele blush, I believe. Or was, just the same. It's the same thing as what newborn boys experience. Less than half now, they say, in the United States, less than 40% in Florida, what they experience in their first days of life is what I call Mengele medicine. It is not to be differentiated at all from the crimes that man committed. So, back to proxy perpetrators. These technologists that Ted went after, they did not torture him in his infancy. But he was correct in identifying the perpetrators as technologists, for whatever that is, whatever that means. Educated people who are just ignorant. They learn this stuff by rote, and their teacher gives them a gold star, and then they start doing this to their fellow man. Just how could you be so oblivious? In Florida, there's this statute called capital sexual abuse. If you injure the genitalia of a child under the age of 12, you qualify for the death penalty, which is unusual because you're supposed to have to kill somebody for the state to apply that penalty to you. But no, we have a governor, and it's fine by me, especially in this context. Whereas in other contexts, I might not believe it was appropriate. And so this is what these people get out of med school, and they go in and they do this capital sexual abuse, and they're oblivious. Why is it? The child knows no difference. The child does not know any difference between what the status quo considers a criminal and what the doctors are doing to the child. No difference. It's what Mengele did not understand. He was a very highly educated man, and all this scientific method of figuring stuff out and writing papers, peer-reviewed, and this and that and the other thing. But he just missed the fucking point that, you have no right to violate a right. There is no right to violate a right. And bodily integrity, if that isn't a right, there's no goddamn thing. There's no such thing. If that isn't a right, there's no such thing. Now, we're in 2025 in the United States of America, and people want to go back in time. I'd do it myself if there was such a machine. There isn't. And people want to pretend for some reason like they're living in 1 or 2000 BC. So anyway, back to proxy perpetrators. So these people were technologists. So Ted, it was uncanny in a way but they were just takers of thought, as Jesus would say. They were just takers who, by taking thought increases their stature. So I think one of my points is when these things happen, like with Jesus, is the lesson extracted and applied? Is the lesson extracted and applied? And it is not. It is, I think, in many regions of Christianity, but not in the United States. And I mean, it is bizarre. Because the only takeaway from Christianity was the eschewing of child cutting. So give credit to the Jews, because Jesus was raised Jew, was raised with a conscience, and figured out that that was what had gotten him. Especially if you see, look online for the Gospel of Thomas, parts 4 and part 53. Parts 4 and 53. It's crystal clear that he'd figured it out. You know, these guys like Ted, you're traumatized and you get all this bipolar shit and whatever else, PTSD, and you're trying to figure it out, but it takes a long time because you don't have a video recording of even the mother recounting of the story when she noticed him collapse in his 9th month of life. Even that, you never hear that, oh, by the way, in his first few days of life, he was strapped to a crucifixion board and crucified. So, so I'm just saying that I don't think anybody should receive a bomb in the mail, by the way. But I do think a lot of people should be criminally charged, of course, and civilly sued. But the question for these proxy perpetrators is, but are you applying the clear lesson? Are you fighting for what's been written, the constitutional rights of the child? It's the same as everybody else's rights. The battery laws don't say anything about age. Unless you're a child, then the penalties become more extreme. And it's called, in Florida, aggravated child abuse. So when I see those guys on TV, like I did this morning in the Ted Koppel interview, I just think of, you know, the Confederacy of dunces and how oblivious the status quo is. Now, granted, and this is a problem, TV has just produced programs for the top of the bell curve. You know, but what about people who know better? And if you're educated and you don't know better, sue your university to get your money back, please. Okay. Let me pause for a second. Well, 2 more examples. One was the court-ordered psychiatrist that did the forensic, I guess you call it, examination of Ted while he was, after he was caught, he was in prison. And his mother tells him this story, and she's sitting across the fucking desk from the Unabomber. And her comment on the mother's report was, no known sequelae. And I'm thinking, what? How? And, she couldn't do anything for Ted's future at that point, but wasn't the point. The point is, she threw every child to follow under the bus, right down the stairs, as they say. Threw them down these stairs. And this also happened in Germany in 2012, when a court in the city of Cologne said, yeah, clearly, this this genital cutting is inflicted. The child didn't choose it. So it's harm, it's battery, it's illegal. And the goddamn German parliament with, I guess at that time, Angela Merkel being the front person for this. Listen to how bad this is. Ethnic Germans do not cut their children for the very most part. And so they only had to throw Semitic babies down the stairs. And it's not their first time on that. It's not their first time. So, I mean, how incredibly oblivious. Absolute confederacy of dunces. Threw those children who are German citizens down the stairs. Just threw them right down the stairs. All right. So anyway, there's a whole shit ton more of proxy perpetrators, and they deserve to be criminally charged. But when you get to that level, of course, you need an army. And like Jesus and Ted were each just an army of one. And you need a bigger army. You need more than one. More than one. But and after that being said, I still believe that we will penetrate this issue in the courts. I'm on my 7th lawsuit and seeking funding for more lawsuits. I've got the defendant for number 8 picked out. And each time I learn more. I'm pro se. And attorneys know more about the law than I do, but I disconsider them in their entirety for their failure to remedy this situation. I mean, it's just weird. And of course, legislatures are made up largely of attorneys, and executive branch, district and state attorneys are made up of lawyers, and judiciaries are made up of lawyers. So there's a real groupthink phenomenon going on there. But anyway, I still believe that we will pop this bubble in the courts. I get better and better at each suit, and I notice that the response gets weaker and weaker, or it seems that way. But you have to have the judge, which is weird because it's the only thing they're there for, to defend the Constitution and pursue justice. Only thing they're there for. And they're tied down by self-interest. I mean, it's what binds us, because we all need a paycheck, and they are elected, the judges, and I guess they like, because it's a great position in the community, and all that. And they don't want their friends to be mad at them. But I say, let your goddamn friends be mad at you. Just let it settle, and most of them will come back. Let them pitch a bitch, because, they got their feelings hurt. They didn't tie them down. You didn't strap them to a crucifixion board and crucify them. They just got their feelings hurt. Well, I could go on for hours and hours, Judaism has given up 24 killing mitzvot. They've given up 24. They had no problem giving up a mitzvot that is timed out. It's anachronistic. It needs to be retired. There's no problem at all. I mean, plus they're such conscientious people. I mean, you can't identify a group that way because you can identify all groups that way. All right. Thank you.